So this is part 2 of the Auditor Day-to-Day series where I talk about the responsibilities that you'll have as a junior auditor in the Big Four on an audit grad scheme. So I've already made a video about the activities of a junior auditor in your first year, and I will link that somewhere here. I can never remember, but it'll be up at the top. And this video we're going to talk a bit more about your comparison of your first year to your senior years on the audit grad scheme, because things change quite fast in a short amount of time. So without further ado, let's get to it. So it's easier to understand each year of the grad scheme in kind of terms of risk and project management. So as you start from first year, your second year and your third year, you're starting from low risk and going up to significant risk, and you're starting from no project management at all to doing a lot of project management at the end. So in your first year, you're likely just focusing on lower risk areas of the file and kind of tying up numbers, making sure the file and only the sections that you own and you take responsibility for are in tip-top shape. But moving into second and third year, which I'm just going to call the kind of like senior years of the grad scheme, we're going to focus on talking about the high risk and significant risk areas of testing that you'll be doing. We'll also be talking about managing and leading client communications, managing review deadlines with the partner, the manager, and an external reviewer, managing the actual mechanics of the audit, like the team, and staying on top of everyone else's areas during the engagement, and also onboarding junior staff as well as coaching and mentoring them. So in your first year, you'll probably be focusing on lower risk areas of the file, and I've gone into a bit more detail on this in my video where I talk about the day-to-day activities of a junior auditor. So check that out for more information on the first year of the grad scheme. And then moving into the senior years of the grad scheme, you'll be moving on to higher risk or significant risk areas of the file, which will involve kind of evaluating the accounting standards a bit more, applying your knowledge from a qualification that you might be doing on the side, whether that's the CA or the CPA. And these might be kind of areas like revenue recognition or capitalized development costs, things like that. Really kind of bitty accounting standards that need a bit more critical thinking around them. So doing a bit more judgmental work and actually having to think about what you're doing and whether your conclusions do mean that, you know, there's no actual risk of material misstatement within that balance that you're testing. So you'll kind of be using your qualification a bit more. You'll be doing a lot of back and forth with the client based on your own questions rather than points that come out of review. And you'll also be working on the financial statements a lot more. So making sure that the statements align with the accounting standards that govern whatever area you work in, that govern that client and the industry, and basically making sure that every single word in the financial statements is true, not just the numbers. Therefore, all of this kind of higher level, more judgmental work that you'll be doing means that you'll be talking to the client about a lot more stuff, and stuff obviously covers a lot of areas here. The next kind of large responsibility of moving into your senior years of the grad scheme is that you'll be managing and leading client relationships a lot more. But in your first year, because you're only really working on lower risk areas of the file, and that kind of takes up probably 90% of your time, this then guides your communications with the client. So you're probably then only really speaking to the client about your specific work, you know, your samples, any questions that have come out of reviews of your work, and only that. You're not really talking to the client about anything else. As you go into your second and third year of the grad scheme, you'll be leading the entire audit team's relationship with the client itself. So this will often involve organizing and actually booking the client status update calls, sending out status updates to the client, and of course discussing and leading the discussion of the progress of the audit during these calls. So all of this entails you having to know, you know, everything about the audit all the time. Not particularly the details, but you'll have to know where each section is sitting to know how you're going to be leading these calls, what you're going to be prioritizing that you need from the client, what you're going to be prioritizing for them to do or for the audit team to do for the client. Your relationship building skills are really put to the test in these final years. And because you're leading these calls and because you're leading this whole audit team client relationship, you have to toe the really weird line between small talk and focusing on the audit and making sure this whole communication is really efficient for the client. You'll have to have confidence in both the status of the audit and in what you're saying, because you'll probably be speaking to a lot more senior leadership, directors, kind of senior controllers, and making sure that they're okay with what they need to do, they're aware of what they need to prioritize. And this is quite frankly a really good experience to have when you're speaking to quite senior people from a position of leading the audit engagement. And this is going to give you kind of people skills that won't be specific to audit at all. So in your first year, you were probably only really told when the review deadlines were going to happen, and your work just then revolved around getting that ready for the review deadline, making sure it wasn't late. But in your senior year, you actually have to look at the audit engagement from a really high level, because you are the one booking these review slots in. You're the one planning who's going to review what and when. You'll have to make sure that when you do book these time slots in, there's enough time to actually do the work, you know, review it, plan, sample it, send samples out to the client, get samples back from the client, document that, and then in between kind of manager and partner review deadlines, you have to make sure that there's enough time that's not too long or too short to close down any points that are then raised from those reviews. So this will actually involve speaking to partners and external reviewers and managers, to some extent their executive assistants, and making sure that you're doing this well in advance of the actual audit engagement starting, so that there's some flexibility in when you can get these deadlines booked in. So on top of actually managing the actual physical review deadlines and these actual slots of time that you're booking in, you also have to actually manage the relationship with the partner and the external reviewer, and possibly even the manager as well. So what this means is that you're kind of keeping each party up to date as to what they need to review when the review slot comes around, and making sure you're getting feedback from them on any major concerns that they have across the file that need addressing really soon, and then making sure that, of course, you're telling them either how you're going to address those concerns or who you've got to address those concerns and what you're basically going to do about them. Managing this relationship also means you have to be really proactive. You have to know that you're, you know, if a review slot's at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, you need to make sure that that person has a list of things that they're going to be reviewing when they go into the file, so that their time's not wasted. You're basically the lead point of contact for all these people who have a billion other things to do when they do eventually drop into the audit file to review and make sure everything's, you know, going well, that you're the one that they can rely on to get that information. Now in your first year, you're kind of just doing your own sections, making sure they get on fine. That's kind of the recurring theme here, is that there's a very internal focus on your own work, whereas now the focus is kind of expanding across the whole engagement. In terms of the actual internal audit team, all you had to do in first year was, you know, make sure that you're updating the team on the status of your areas and doing that in a timely manner. Whereas in second and third year and in more senior years, you're actually setting that whole system up. And loads of different firms are going to have different ways of project management. You might have sprint systems, and that's agile systems and Kanban boards, and loads of different ways to manage a project. But in your senior year, you're setting up these systems. So you're setting up the project management system, you're assigning people to sections of the file based on, you know, risk, based on their experience with the client, based on their level of seniority. For example, you'll have to prepare a work allocation and a project plan. And this means assigning every member of staff a role of, you know, what section each person's going to be doing, what section each reviewer is going to be reviewing, what external specialist teams you're going to need on the job and when they're going to be booked. If you've already taken the steps out to make sure that team is booked for the right time. For specialist teams, it's things like IT audit teams or tax specialist teams. And you'll have to actually use, you know, like the firm-wide timetable scheduler to make sure that you've got an idea of when individuals have been assigned to the audit engagement, and then you can use that as a basis to then develop a project plan. You'll also have to use this project plan to then determine, you know, when certain things are going to happen in the audit. And this is very high level. So like when you're going to send out request lists to the client, when you're going to start doing the planning, when you're going to start doing sampling, when you're going to obviously book your review slots in, and obviously like when things are going to start closing out. So you're in charge of that whole project plan, making sure everyone's aware of it and putting it together. So with onboarding, coaching, and mentoring junior staff, you basically do not obviously ever get close to this in your first year because you are the junior staff. But in your second and third year, you'll be responsible for the graduates or responsible for making sure they're fine because you're the closest to them. This is a really important aspect of your role because you're not only the closest to them right now, but you're the closest to them while also sliding into these kind of managerial responsibilities. And the effectiveness of junior staff and new grads and how well they get on and how comfortable they are is a direct reflection of how effective you are at onboarding and coaching and mentoring them. And this is super, super, super important because it's so easy to kind of leave junior staff to it, thinking, you know, you don't want to micromanage them and that they can do what they need to do and that there can't possibly be questions because maybe you didn't have questions on a certain topic. But I think it's really important, as someone who is the field senior on the job, really transparent and really honest about what you did know, what you didn't know, and that you're comfortable to answer any questions that they have, and that, you know, asking questions and of course building an environment where there's no such thing as a stupid question. I am continuously really honest about the fact that first year can be and is really, really overwhelming. You're doing a lot, even though it sounds like you've got a lot more to come in second and third year. You're doing a lot because it's the first time you're ever exposed to all this work. And it's really important to emphasize for audit juniors that no one ever wants them to fail or to be working on something by themselves and to never ask questions and to never seek out help, because the audit engagement team is a team. If someone has messed up, it's a mess up for the entire team. It's not really a mess up just on them. So as I'm going to advise later on in this video, I've opted to actually diarize time with like new grads and juniors to make sure that, you know, all their questions get answered and they know that that time is carved out for them. So I hope this video gave you a bit of clarity as to what to expect from an audit grad scheme at the Big Four, because this channel is all about not being the gatekeeper of important information that applies to anyone in a corporate career. So, sounds like a lot of stuff to do. Without losing your mind and doing all this stuff at the same time, my best advice is to always have your diary itemized to the T. Get everything that you need to do into your diary so there's always time for it. It doesn't have to be done at that specific time, but as long as it's on your diary, you know it needs to be done. And of course, all of these responsibilities are going to vary from client to client, depending on the audit team size, depending on the firm size. But this weird mix of actually doing audit work but also spinning loads of plates is basically your responsibilities as you tend towards the end of your audit grad scheme. So I hope this video gave you a little bit more clarity as to what to expect from your audit grad scheme at the Big Four. And if you have been enjoying these videos, please do subscribe, as it gives me a good idea that you're actually enjoying them and I should be making more of them. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions at all, drop them down in the comments. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.